Wow. It's Sunday, which means Doctor Who, and it is time for me to do a review of a classic Doctor Who episodes. And my supporters over on Patreon selected for me this time the Two Doctors. I think this is the last multi-Doctor story that I needed to see. So I actually no idea when I'll get to it, but I can finally do a ranking of the multi-Doctor stories now. Hey, there we go. But yeah, so this happened during Colin Baker's time as the Doctor, so during the Sixth Doctor's era, and we have him teaming up with Patrick Troughton, the Second Doctor. So, how does this go? Oh my God. Okay. You know, it's funny. I've seen some bad episodes of Doctor Who, new and classic, and I've even seen some episodes of classic that like are touted as like the worst, like the Twin Dilemma. I always see touted as like one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who ever. I think the Twin Dilemma was a lot better than this. Holy cow. Okay. Trying to be spoiler free, at least initially, on this. Trust me, you shouldn't care if I spoil it, but you know, whatever. Before I even try and get into the plot, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be really sporadic and like miss things. Like, I had such a hard time focusing on this, paying any degree of attention. Not even like with a phone in my hand, like I'm distracted, like just looking at the screen, my brain was checking out, like, no, I don't want to process this information. So I'm probably going to have a hard time remembering character names or, you know, I'm sure I'll miss some details, but oh dear God. Okay, so plot-wise, actually, you know what? Before I even try and recount the plot, what is the major appeal of multi-Doctor stories? It's seeing the Doctor interact with himself. Guess what there's almost none of in this story? Like, at all. Hardly any. We start off with the Second Doctor traveling with Jamie, and it's kind of adorable how... I mean, I know that the low definition of the recordings and TVs at the time, you know, was a lot more forgiving than now, but it's kind of adorable that they thought they could get away with not only having Patrick Troughton, but also Fraser Hines back as Jamie, and think that audiences wouldn't notice they look 20 years older. And then again, I guess, you know, a lot of the era of those guys were lost, so I guess maybe they figured people didn't have the comparison to be able to make in a lot of cases, but wow. Okay, so we start with the two of them, and immediately I am confused because they arrive at this sort of space science research station. And the Doctor confronts the guy who is running it, and apparently the Doctor, the Second Doctor, was sent by the Time Lords to look into what he's doing because he's supervising some experiments in time travel that have the Time Lords concerned. The second, like, I know the Doctor has been an agent of the Time Lords, usually reluctantly at a few points, but the Second Doctor is working for the Time Lord showed up for the very first time during the Second Doctor's era in his very last story, and he was terrified of them, and they immediately sentenced him to regeneration and banishment on Earth because of his tendency to, you know, mess around with time and history. That Doctor is working with the Time Lords. And I know they toss off something like about how it's all deniable and like it's an unofficial capacity, but no, the That doesn't gloss over this. That makes no sense whatsoever. So there's that, first of all. And so apparently this is a really small cast for the fact that this is a 3-part story. I'll be coming back to that fact, how long this thing is, probably a few times. But so the Doctor and Jamie get here. The station has basically kind of she's officially an assistant, but she's super smart because she's been augmented by this professor sort of character that the Doctor is, initially they're confronting. And she is super smart, but apparently she's an evolved and smartened form, mega genius, they actually use the phrase, mega genius, form of a very base, kind of instinctive, not especially intelligent or nuanced race. Adrigan, I believe is what they call them. And for point of reference, we have another Adrigan character who is the chef on board this thing. And I'll come back to him too. But he gives us a baseline for what these like. He is obsessed with figuring out how to cook basically any living thing he encounters. How would it taste? What's the best way to prepare it? So obviously he sees Jamie and immediately wants to cook him. And so that's our comparison. But her, the woman who's been sort of upgraded, she is articulate and intelligent. But the Doctor is super worried about her, making an argument that because of what she was evolved from, because that base level was so aggressive and single-minded and barbaric, I suppose, that she still can't be trusted, which I'm actually going to pause for a second and pick at that, because that seems like a really weird argument in the first place, because, everything is evolved from something primitive and barbaric. And yes, I know this isn't a case of generations she's evolved over. It's one person being pushed further along. But the thing that sort of annoys me about it is that this is the first time we're seeing this race, so far as I know. And I find it really uncomfortable when the Doctor makes a blanket statement about an entire race or species of alien as being, well, honestly, anything negative other than the Daleks. He has every basis to say horrible things about the Daleks, and you know what? I'll give it to the Cybermen too, because of, the whole conversion thing. And since they're so augmented, that actually is kind of a case of met one, met them all. Actually, in both cases. But other than that, at least for me, it goes against the nature of the Doctor, or how I choose to think of the Doctor, when he just blanket, you can't trust any of them, sort of statement. I know we have a lot of whole species that are villains, but to pick, say, one that we see in this story, we've got the Sontarans. And the Sontarans, yes, they're always dangerous when they show up, but we're also always dealing with military. Now, it does seem like Sontarans are nothing but military, but you could make an argument that it's this class that is the issue, as opposed to the species as a whole. And I think in a lot of cases we're dealing with just one really awful person when we're dealing with a lot of, or an awful group. But having the Doctor make a blanket statement about the species as a whole just felt wrong to me. Anyway, he turns out to be right, because she does in fact betray them. She lets Sontarans onto the station. We get 2 Sontarans. The fact that they had no money to make that, this is the one, much more than a wobbly set. This story, this wore its lack of money on its sleeve. You could tell that they had no money for anything. And I think it's actually most reflected in how small the cast is. Because, as I said, we've got the 2 doctors, they've each got a companion. We've got the professor guy, we've got the woman, we've got the chef, we've got 2 Sontarans, and then we've got this Spanish woman and this English would-be actor. I don't know why. Like at all. I'm going to go through a whole lot of divergences of stuff that is just bad and wrong with this. Okay, and I haven't even gotten through synopsizing the story. Okay. So, the second Doctor gets captured and kidnapped, and because of the time experiments going on in the place where that happens, his capture and the things they're doing to him kind of reverberates down his own timeline. So the sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, sort of feels that something is wrong and goes to investigate that. Now, they have captured the second Doctor because they need part of his genetics in order to figure out time travel, because apparently, and this actually I thought was kind of neat, is there is a symbiotic biological link between the Doctor and his TARDIS that enables himself and those in his immediate proximity, i.e. his companions, to travel safely. But if someone who does not have that in their genes, or isn't right next to someone who does have that in their genes, if they try and time travel even in a device that is capable of it, they will disintegrate or dematerialize or just kind of fall apart. That's kind of an interesting thing. I think it's completely inconsistent with a fair number of stuff that's gone on, definitely since that episode, probably even before, but that's kind of neat. But they need his genetic information to be able to perfect this time travel technology. The Sontarans are expecting use of it. You have bickering between the various villains. A whole crap ton of this is set in just this old house on Earth, because of course it is, because that's a cheap location. The Doctor gets messed with and tinkered in. The second Doctor gets further messed with, and they attempt to turn him into an androgen, which means he, like the chef character, now becomes obsessed with food, and the two of them this is all okay. Now I'm getting into what would be considered spoilers. Like, this thing is a mess, and like on every single conceivable level, it's a mess. Like, I know there are classic Who fans who feel that I really get overly harsh on the budgetary restrictions of these things, but like, there's having not a lot of money, and there's knowing how to work with the fact that you don't have a lot of money. Building a 3-part multi-Doctor story around a cast this small and this few locations, especially when they keep referring to people who aren't there. We're getting reference to the Sontaran fleet, or we get repeated reference like to 2 other scientists whose work all this is being built on, who worked at the science space station, but who we never see at all because they would have had to pay actors to play that. And coming back to the Sontarans, they look awful. Like, and that's not me comparing to now. That's me comparing to earlier appearances of the Sontarans. Compared to Lynx and the Time Warrior, first time Sontarans ever appeared, these guys look awful. I strongly suspect that we're dealing with the same problem that they had when they brought back Davros the first time. I think it was in Destiny of the Daleks, where they've got basically old masks and suits made for actors who aren't returning to play these creatures again, which means that instead of creating a new mask to fit whoever the heck it is, we've got a mask for somebody else, and it looks awful and barely moves. That's what happened with Davros. I'm fairly certain that's what happened here. They just look terrible and they move awful. And the performances are, actually, you know what? Performances are fine. Oddly enough. Like, when I actually stop and think about it, there's nothing wrong with the performances in this. There's a lot wrong with the writing, like top to bottom. And there's some other of the things that just go on. And okay, so I'm not going to blame on the actress. I'm going to blame it on the writing. Why is Perry traveling with the Doctor? Like, I don't mean why did she initially start traveling him. Why is she still? Because she does not seem to enjoy being with Colin Baker's Doctor at all. They're not having fun before, or she's not having fun at least, before the adventure starts because he wants to fish and she's bored out of her mind. She is nervous and antsy and not at all excited at the possibilities of the danger on the space. She doesn't seem to like to be around him. So, I mean, I understand that, there was intended to be the gradual softening of their relationship and all that, but when he doesn't seem to appreciate having her around and she doesn't seem to like him either, that just doesn't work. Like, it would have worked if she was, trying to bring a little more niceness on him, but she just seems fed up with him. And her outfit is also, look, I know it sounds kind of piggish for me to point this out, but I'm sorry. The outfit they put her in for this, she has got cleavage you could lose a small dog in. It's really distracting, actually. And like I said, though, the performances are fine. The guy who plays the cook, somebody's gonna put the character's name in the comments, and because like I told you, that I am recording this as soon as I finish it because these details are like my brain is rejecting this thing. But he is very obviously having a lot of fun, and he's putting a lot of effort into the performance that he's giving, and it's a full body performance. It's not phoned in. Definitely, and it's not even like bad or campy, but the problem is the character is so one note. You just, oh god. And then he and the second, I'm getting properly into spoilers now. Do you care? I hope you don't care. You don't want to watch this. So by this I mean that you do want to watch this. Keep watching. Maybe not. I don't know. Oh god. So the second Doctor is turned into part androgen, and he and this chef, they go off to a restaurant, and it's this whole extended thing. Like, so much time is eaten up in this. You've got this explanation of how they get to town, and the town's not even that far away, but we have to stop and take a minute, 2 solid minutes of them stopping a truck, and the driver gets out, and the chef hits him with his stick and knocks him out, except he doesn't hit him in the head. He hits him in the middle of his back. Somehow that knocks him out. Okay. And then, they go down and they bicker for a while. Like that's another solid minute of them bickering before they get to a restaurant. It's just, why? And I know why. For whatever reason, whatever glitch of scheduling, they set aside 3 episodes for this. Now that might not sound a lot, because if you're used to Classic Who, you probably know that most of the time for Classic Who, episodes were about, I was going to say half an hour, but they weren't really. They were 22, 24 minutes. Usually it's about 22 minutes. And most of those stories were 4 parts and up. During Colin Baker's run, they tried it a different way, and they did basically double-length episodes and did fewer of them. So a 2-parter during the Colin Baker era is the equivalent to a 4-parter for the Doctors prior to that. And so when I say there are 3 episodes devoted to this, I mean it's the equivalent of 6 episodes of any earlier Doctor. It's over 2 hours. And I don't mean 2 hours, factoring in for, no, just 2 hours. No commercial, just over 2 hours. It felt a lot longer because it just goes nowhere. It spins wheels and it sinks so much time into characters like this friggin' wannabe actor who shows up again as the waiter at the restaurant and then just gets stabbed. What, did they think it was funny? We sink a lot of time at him, because he had set up ahead of time, him and the Spanish woman. And that whole thing is weird because, these are the sort of characters that do show up in Classic Who from time to time, the side characters who aren't really involved until they sort of stumble into things, except usually when they work, it's something that is set on an alien or future or past setting where they can give us more context and more flavor for the world we're in. This section is set in modern day Europe. We don't need these people to give us a point of reference for what things are like here. That's just what oh my God. I could go through and I could pick apart thing after thing after thing after thing. Okay, one other really nitpicky thing, and then maybe I'll like close out. Because aside from the fact that the performances are solid, not great, but solid, I have nothing good to say about this thing. The writing is atrocious. It's awful. And on every level, the dialogue, the plot, the pacing. So one other thing, I just want to note this because this was an early indicator of how bad this was going to be. So the second Doctor and Jamie, the TARDIS materializes in the chef's kitchen, and they get out, and he's isn't sure who they are. Now he's got on his belt this big ass sword. It's a scimitar. It's a full-size scimitar. And he reaches behind himself to get a knife. You have a sword on you. If you want to threaten them, why are you reaching for... You had a... And that kind of stuff is just throughout. On top of everything else that I've mentioned. This thing is plotting. It is pointless. It's not fun. It doesn't give you the one job of a multi-Doctor story, which is the Doctor interacting with himself. It's just painful. Like, I've still got a lot of stuff to see, so I'm not saying this will always be the case, but as of right now, this is the worst Doctor Who. Definitely classic, possibly even new Who. Oh, no, not worse than Hellbent, because Hellbent like actively makes me furious, but maybe short of that, like this is worse than Gods and Monsters, or sorry, Love and Monsters. Seriously, because at least Love and Monsters only eats up 45 minutes of your time. Oh, dear Lord. The Two Doctors, have you seen it? I hope not, but if you have, or you have other thoughts you want to share, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. I'm not even going to bother mentioning like and subscribe anymore. By all means, go ahead and do that. But I would recommend that you follow me either on Twitter or Facebook or Patreon. Because you will, at those places, get the updates for all new videos. Whereas you just subscribe, I can't guarantee it's going to show up in your subscription fees because YouTube is being a jerk again. So, whatever your thoughts are, drop them down there. And just remember, folks, you are the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.